is tragedies and comedies, always written in verse, and lyric poetry. Lyric poetry, the word lyric comes from the Greek word lyra, or lyre, which is a stringed instrument, and that points to the fact that most, although not all of the poetry, Greek poetry conventionally labeled lyric, was originally composed to be sung to musical accompaniment. If you look at any dictionary, the definition of lyric poem that you're likely to find is something like a short poem expressing the poet's own thoughts and feelings, something like that. And in the Greek context, that seems to pretty well distinguish lyric poetry both from epic and from drama. The Greek lyric poets dealt with various themes. One common one, of course, is love. That's a very common theme for poetry. And the poet that is particularly associated with that is the poet Sappho, who is the only, one of the very few women poets that ancient Greece produced. Another very common topic is wine, the pleasures of wine in the drinking party, symposium, to use the Greek word. And the poet that's particularly associated with that theme is Sappho's contemporary Alcaeus. And his poems can often be paraphrased or summarized as, it's cold and wet outside, so let's have a drink, or it's hot and dry, so let's have a drink, or something wonderful happened, so let's have a drink, or things are going terribly, so let's have a drink. Some other poets deal with political subjects, like the Athenian statesman Solon, who carried out some very important reforms in the Athenian government. And then, when he received criticism later, he wrote a bunch of poems defending his measures. And he ruefully comments in one of them that in matters of importance, it is difficult to please everyone. Very true. Another type of poem, lyric poem, was victory odes, composed for victorious athletes. And it was the athletes themselves who would hire a poet to celebrate their deeds. Since most of what we have of Greek lyric poetry has survived in fragmentary form, the total quantity is not that great, which means the reading load in the course won't be great. And so it might be an opportunity for people who would like to learn a bit about classical antiquity but not commit themselves to an entire epic. Although next fall I will be doing the Iliad. The course catalog does indicate the title of the book we'll be using, which is my own translations, called Greek Lyric and Anthology and Translation, which you can order online. So hope to see you there in March. Bye.
Our next class is Life on the Edge. Many of you know David Tucker, our longtime scientific instructor. He has an uncanny ability to teach very complex topics so that all of us can understand it. I don't know how he does it, but this time he's going to attempt quantum physics. David?
Just that's them right there.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Hey. So my first question is for Andrew back there. If I take your course this year again, are you going to tell me to go to hell? Okay. All right. Next page. Okay, so all of the pictures you see here, biology in nature, but we're going to apply quantum mechanics to all of these. Here's your chance to learn something about quantum mechanics. It's absolutely unbelievable. Take, for example, the dice. If you can make yourselves two dice that are quantum entangled, that means they're sort of like identical twins. Forever, they will stay that way. And I'll show you in just a minute here where the robin, the migrating robin, does exactly this. Okay, I'll teach you about this quantum entanglement stuff, and we could make ourselves a pair of quantum dice, take them to Las Vegas, and we would do quite well for a while. Okay, so we'll study about why anemone fish can find their way all the way from the Philippines to the Great Barrier Reef with no trouble. We'll study about how quantum mechanics impacts genetic mutations. Next slide. Okay, there's our quantum robin. Okay, and photosynthesis. Oh, there's on the right-hand side there is a moth's antenna. And to think that a moth can, the male moth can find the female moth at between here and Burlington, one molecule communication there. Let's see, next slide. Okay, butterflies. We'll learn how butterflies use Earth's magnetic field to find their way. And it's very interesting for the butterfly because it turns out we now believe they have two sets of eyes. One that's for visual things and one that actually feels the Earth's magnetic field. Let's see. The nerve cells, we'll study how quantum mechanics impacts nerve transmissions. And down in the bottom corner there is a T-Rex. That T-Rex was unearthed in Montana, Hell's Creek, in the Badlands, or I should say in South Dakota. Okay, and it turns out that we now know that that T-Rex is partly, sort of, alive now. Okay? It's not a fossil, it is actually viable. Next slide. Oh, I missed them. Okay, so there was a couple more things, and I want to tell you one thing about, go back one slide. And a real cool, one more. Okay, there, photosynthesis. We now know that photosynthesis is a semiconductor computer. Really true, it is. And a group of artificial intelligence guys at Harvard a couple, 3 weeks ago were reading a paper published by a research group in England on quantum biology. Okay, and they sent this paper over here because we have experts that are dealing with quantum mechanics that way. Okay, and so he was reading the paper. They were eating lunch. And the leader of this research group said, my goodness, here we've spent $1 million this year trying to build a quantum computer, and I just ate one. Thank you very much.
Many of us, some of us, may not really appreciate opera, but it's probably because we don't know much about it. Stasia Pacheco is going to try to teach us about Puccini's Turandot. And she has taught many classes before and gives many lectures on opera before the operas begin. So, Stasia, you want to tell us about Turandot?
Okay, let's consider that opera is like cultural cod liver oil for us. And I can prove that opera can change life. I'm not expecting you to start operas, but I would like you to use the opportunity to see the live opera which is produced by our local company in beautiful McIntyre Hall in Mount Vernon. So they are challenged themselves with the fantastic opera Turandot. This is the last opera which Puccini wrote. Puccini is extremely lovable. You cannot not like his opera. If you have never seen or have never had the performance of opera live, this is the time for you. because Puccini's opera has a great capacity to leave a really wonderful first impression. So life for me without opera would be even drearier place than the evening news would like us think. Why opera? Because opera is the component of many, many arts. It is visual, it is music, it is costume, it is performance, it is beautiful, beautiful music. And it going deep in our inside. Puccini's life was very interesting. He can be a story for the opera himself. But opera changed his life dramatically. When he was a teenager in the family of musicians who wanted him to be the church musician, writing just all those cantatas and working with the choirs, he was not really very much enthusiastic about that. Even one day he had stolen and one of the pipe from the organ, sold it as a scrap metal to buy tobacco. And the family didn't even know what to do, how to push him into the family trade, which lasted for 124 years. And one day, Puccini, with some of his friends, walked to Pisa to see the opera by Verdi, Aida, and it changed his life. He realized that this type of music he can devote his life to. And this is what happened. He's a lucky author, as a composer. Many, even Donizetti, whose operas are fantastic, he wrote 75, we know only 9. Puccini wrote 10, and we know all 10 of them. Turandot is his last opera, and it had a lot of interesting transition. It may be the sorceress, it may be beautiful lady, and I am going to prove that she is innocent. So everyone says that she is bad. Okay, come to my class and we will see that. Thank you.
You know how they say every day you should learn something new? Stasia just helped teach me that it's Turandot, not Turandot. We're really fortunate on our curriculum committee to have Dr. Kay Wolfburn on the committee, and she is something of a political expert and is going to give a class this time on gerrymanders, election 2018, and census 2020.
So, be honest now, how many of you have read something or seen a presentation about gerrymandering in the last couple of months? So why all the attention to this now? Gerrymandering as a way of doing redistricting, what is that? Has been around for a long time. But this year, it's getting a lot of attention from SCOTUS. Do we know what SCOTUS is? The Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, and some state Supreme Courts as well. So why is that? Redistricting and maybe even gerrymandering is part of what happens to protect democracy, right? Or not. So what you might find out if you take this course is why you might love gerrymandering. You might. Or you might hate it. But you'll see why that is. Different states do it in different ways, right? So that's the first piece. Then the second piece is, to the puzzle, The fall elections, 1998. This year we have elections in the fall. They are the off-year elections. And so what do we know about the off-year elections? Turnout is always lower than when we pick a president or re-elect a president. Why is that? And is that dangerous for democracy? Is that a threat to democracy? Or is it part of what democracy should be? I'll give you good reasons not to vote, okay? And I'll give you some reasons to maybe vote. And so you can decide, is there another way of doing this, protecting democracy, that is, or threatening? Different states do the elections in different ways. Got that? Third piece, okay, is the Census 2020. Now, unlike gerrymandering or redistricting and elections, the states don't do the census. One of my favorite entities does the census. Federal bureaucracy. How come I'm not seeing delight on all your faces? Come on now. Why do they do that? And how often do they do that? And who exactly is doing that? There might be some job opportunities for all of you, just saying. So why might you pay a lot of attention already to the 2020 census? Or why might you not pay attention to the 2020 census? And is there any other way? Does this is something to do with protecting democracy, or maybe it's a threat to democracy as well? So another puzzle piece. So when we finish those three components, then we're going to put the puzzle together. Have we figured out how these three things are closely interrelated? And do they come together in a way that protects democracy or threatens democracy? That's how we'll figure it out all together, okay? Join me at the end of March.
George Meritz is a retired Western history professor, and he wants you to go with him in search of the modern mind. He can't be here today, but Shanna is going to tell you about the class.
Kay is a hard act to follow. So George is super disappointed he could not come today, but he wrote up a really long essay that he wanted us to read, but I shortened it because my rule is 3 minutes for each instructor. So in this class, you will be guided by two overarching concerns. The first is to seek, and one hopes to some degree to find, the origins of the modern Western thought. And second, to come to a definition of the so-called modern mind. The first session will be devoted to both of these tasks, and the instructor, George, hopes that participants will become willing to ask some questions about modern thought. What constitutes being and thinking as modern? In which specific century or centuries should the inquiry begin? Where geographically does one begin, and is the intellectual life of some other country or countries most seminal? There are, of course, a host of other questions to pose, and George wants everyone to come not only with questions, but a willingness to add elements to the process as well. So if you sign up for George's course, you're going to have to come prepared to talk and have fun. And his course is on Tuesdays. It starts April 3rd, and it goes through the 24th, and it's from 2 to 4 p.m. at our favorite location, the Bellingham Cruise Terminal.
Music is a very popular topic for ALL participants, and Dustin Willits is a very well qualified instructor for that topic. He is going to give a class on enhancing the musical experience. There we go.
Hi, people who have forgotten more than you'll ever learn. That's not me neither, but I have a 3-week course in April that will be for musicians and non-musicians alike, and it will sort of be a sneak peek into the minds of artistic people who form concerts and who put together plays and operas and sort of experience what that is like. The course will be slightly catered to the audience, so if a bunch of music majors and professors show up, we'll have one sort of conversation, and if not, we'll have a completely different conversation. But the goal of the course is to enhance the experience for anybody who loves to go to concerts of any kind, not just choral or band or woodwind quintets, but any type of concert you can think of, and we'll talk about what it's like to be a relevant artist and what it's like to use nonverbal communication and all of the tools that we have. Thank you.
Mary Chamberlain, you're tall. Mary Chamberlain has gained a real following with ALL. She's taught, I think, 3 courses so far. And her classes are on various aspects of physiology. Again, she has the ability to be thorough, but to make the classes really fun and very interesting. This class is Some Like It Hot, or not. Mary, do you want to tell us about that?